Wuchang Fallen Feathers, a game that has seemingly come out of nowhere and a title that has genuinely surprised me. With all the Souls-likes we've been getting in the past few years, some have been bangers and some have been lackluster, so I'm sure you might be wondering what the case is for this title. A look at the reviews on Steam might scare you off, and I'll be explaining why it has the rating it has, while also covering just about everything you might want to know. Up until this point, Lies of P, which is an amazing game by the way, has always been my favorite Souls-like, but after beating this game, I think it's taken first place. From amazing visuals, fantastic combat, and a gorgeous art direction, this is my in-depth and non-spoiler review of Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Starting off with the combat, I found it to be extremely enjoyable. It certainly has its own feel and style, but I wouldn't describe it as feeling floaty or unimpactful, which is always important in a Souls-like. Wuchang offers a great amount of playstyle variety that's likely to satisfy most, if not all players, thanks to the diversity in weapon types and what might be the biggest skill tree I've ever seen in a video game. This really is a dream for people that enjoy making builds and honing down on a specific weapon or playstyle while not punishing you for it, as you can respec anytime you want. I personally always love spears, so that's what I went with in my playthrough, and I had a great time with all the different skill sets and animations that came with it. But if that's not for you, there's long swords, great axes, dual blades, one-handed swords, and magic. So yeah, something for everyone. As for the magic itself, I do want to touch on it a bit more because I really enjoyed that you don't have to exclusively build into it for it to be viable. It's more like a secondary attack that doesn't take up any weapon slots, and because of this, I got to try just about all of them. There's tons of spells in Wuchang and they all look great and flashy, which is a major plus in my book. This game really makes it feel easy to use all of the tools at your disposal, and I love that because nothing feels like it's getting in the way of each other. You even get 2 weapon slots that you can switch between freely to make really cool combos, and there isn't a weight system that punishes you for doing so. I love player expression in games that don't heavily restrict your combat, and there's a ton of freedom in this title. I also do want to mention that despite the fact that some bosses are definitely easier with specific weapons, I managed to beat the game without having to completely change my build a single time. I do have a lot of experience in Souls games, and the only time I ever had to do that was with this asshole. And having to switch my whole build always leaves a sour taste in my mouth, so I'm happy I didn't have to do that with this title. Speaking on the bosses, and arguably one of the most important aspects of a title like this, they were pretty enjoyable and well balanced overall. Wuchang did a great job on keeping them diverse, as I genuinely had to use different tactics and techniques with every other boss. They all look amazing along with their arenas, and they have a strong presence that will get you excited to begin the fight. I have heard some people say they're too easy to kill, and I honestly disagree. I'm certainly not the best player of all time, and I'm certainly not the worst, but I really do think they are mostly well balanced. Not every Souls-like needs to be the hardest game you've ever played, but hey, that's just me. A more common and understandable complaint I completely get is the way this game handles knockdowns. With no way to quickly get back up or roll out of it, you're likely to take an insane amount of damage, making them feel a bit unreasonably punishing. I found that sometimes it's best to just lay on the ground and let the enemy finish their combos while you have the iframes, but either way it feels pretty disruptive in comparison to everything else. Ultimately, despite a few flaws, the combat in this game is very strong, has a great amount of variety, and feels good whether it's against the bosses or mob enemies. If you like good Souls-like combat, this game definitely delivers. Getting into the content of Wuchang Fallen Feathers, this game is incredibly packed with content and provides a ton of areas to explore and things to do. It provides a truly expansive world that is gorgeous to adventure in, and with the diversity in its locations, doesn't ever feel stale. There's a ton of visual variety here, and for a game with this much exploration, it's important that the environments you travel through look different enough to not feel repetitive. While I'd love to go more into the art direction of this world, that's for another section, so let's talk about what's actually in these gorgeous locations. Fortunately, the enemy types follow the same path with a strong variety, and despite a few common mob types, you will find newer enemies to fight throughout the entire game. They all fit into their locations as they should and require different approaches of handling them. While traveling through these beautiful locations, you'll also find that it's not an open world, but rather a linear game with an immense amount of side paths. So many side paths, in fact, that I do think it can be overwhelming to players that are looking for a title that's more straightforward. With how much I was enjoying Wuchang, I actually appreciated the amount of locations despite hoping it would be mostly linear when I first picked it up, because I genuinely wanted to see more of this world. Its numerous interconnecting paths and hidden shortcuts is extremely reminiscent of Dark Souls 1, and while I personally like that, I do think it won't be for everyone. At the very least, there are tons of useful items tucked away in corners around the world, providing upgrades for your healing flask, benedictions which act as small upgrades for your individual weapons, and pendants which are this game's version of the talismans from Elden Ring. While some paths are certainly less rewarding than others, I found the exploration to be mostly rewarding and worthwhile, as some locations are entirely skippable if you don't stray from the main path. Throughout this world, there's also a hefty amount of NPCs and questlines. They all do a great job providing additional world building and rewards, though I did find it to be a bit frustrating at how easily you could get locked out of them. It felt tricky and made me cautious about over-exploring the world, as experiencing one encounter before another could completely lock you out of them. Another thing I found to be a bit frustrating was how this game handled its shrines, them acting as bonfires or the game's save points. At this point in 2025, I think we're well past the point of long runbacks, and I hate when games don't evolve from this outdated and tedious tradition. Even FromSoft has cut down on this with their newly introduced Stakes of America, and I don't see why we're still getting titles that do this. This artificial difficulty has never made these games more fun and have always been something I've dreaded encountering in this genre. Onto a more positive note, once you do finally beat the boss after running multiple marathons back to the arena, you get to bring back their unique treasure to the merchant in exchange for outfits. And the outfits in this game do look great. There are tons to choose from and you can mix and match them for more unique looks, and to make it even better, there is transmog. I find it so baffling that this system isn't implemented into more games, so when it is present, that's always a huge positive, as I always end up choosing fashion over functionality. A system that's specifically unique to Wuchang Fallen Feathers is the madness mechanic. At first I thought I was going to hate it, but I ended up liking what it added to the experience, considering it's pretty fleshed out. You essentially gain madness based on killing regular humans or dying too many times, and once your madness bar fills up, you'll start to notice changes in the gameplay. The more madness you have built up equals the more amount of souls you drop upon death, and once you reach the maximum, your character actually does more damage in combat. The caveat being that you get more damage done to you as well. Also, when you do inevitably die with maximum madness, an entity known as the inner demon will spawn at your drop souls, meaning the only way you could get them back is by defeating them. For those who like the madness system, you can build into it with specific skills in the skill tree, and for those who don't, you can give an offering to the game's shrines to completely remove it. I actually like this addition in the game, and I'm happy that it doesn't intrude too much on the gameplay while being something you could ignore or actually take advantage of. Overall, the world and mechanics of Wuchang are pretty well done, providing an enjoyable and content-rich experience that kept me engaged throughout the entire playthrough. Its biggest flaws come from the artificial difficulty that's oddly pushed around the world, whether it be the sparsely placed shrines or overabundance of status effects. The story of this game genuinely surprised me so much, because this is without a doubt one of the most enjoyable stories I've come across in the Souls-like genre. Even if it's not the most unique one, it's interesting, kept me engaged, and had a great overall tone. I found it extremely refreshing that I could follow what was happening in the game and our characters' objectives without having to look it up online, because I was clueless all the way through. The world building is present through the environments, NPCs, and quest lines, which all come together into a cohesive and well-rounded game. Through little things like scribes around the disheveled towns and villagers locked away in their homes, the world felt real, and I really appreciated the attention to detail. One thing I particularly liked was when you give the merchant items for bosses you defeated, he would tell you lore about them and information about the treasures they possessed. I loved knowing that the bosses I was fighting actually fit into the world in one way or another, and weren't just some enemy that looked like they belonged there. The storytelling in this game is great, as everything presented to the player has purpose. The world is both horrifying and beautiful, as is the story, and while the gameplay still takes center stage, I truly think the added depth creates a strong synergy. On to my favorite part of any game I review, let's talk about the art design. When I first caught wind of Wuchang Fallen Feathers, I knew I had to play it just because of the art direction, and after completing the game, I'm extremely happy to say that it delivers. Starting off with the world itself, and something that is a crucial element in titles like this, the environments are absolutely gorgeous. These locations range from beautiful forests and scenic mountaintops to torture dungeons and pillaged villages. Its contrast between a dreadful story and a beautiful world really gives it its own character and makes the game really stand out. The corruption of these illustrious lands is both sinister and stunning, which is certainly something you rarely see. There's tons of detail put into all these locations, and most importantly, they never get boring to look at. There's so much diversity in these environments, and with an experience that's packed with so much content, this is a must-have to prevent fatigue. Visual variety is something a lot of titles suffer from by not implementing it, and it's nice to see that it was properly executed here. The colors in this game have great contrast, and while I was dreading the inevitable snow location these games always have, I ended up actually liking how Wuchang Fallen Feathers did theirs. I can't stand snow locations because most games that do them just make everything white, which is arguably one of the most boring colors to be completely surrounded by. I had a major issue with with this in last year's Black Myth Wukong, as it was one of my least favorite locations in any Souls-like I've ever played. Moving on to the character designs, I'm always a sucker for twisted and horrific enemy designs, and they are done extremely well here. The enemies once again follow suit in their visual variety, providing tons of really cool looks, whether they're monstrous and mutated or completely unearthly looking hellspawn. Their designs still stood out to me despite how many games I've played with similar horror elements, and it's nice to see their own unique take. The bosses also look amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed the grotesque designs that we were given. Some of their introductions alone are so memorable, and their presentation overall was extremely strong. A lot of the bosses in this game are like taking main enemies from the Resident Evil series and turning them into Souls-like encounters, which I personally love. Generally, when I cover this section, I like to show the concept art for things like this, but for whatever reason, there seems to be none available anywhere. With a game that has such a big emphasis on its art direction, I'm really not sure why it hasn't been released yet. I would have loved to at least look at the process behind their designs a bit more to give a deeper analysis, so that does kinda suck. Onto our protagonist Wuchang, she looks great as well. There's tons of visual effects they did with her that I loved, like the glowing feathers that appear on her arm as you build up your Skyborn might, or how her eyes glow red once you've reached a certain level of madness. These details and how her design interacts with the world around her add a lot of depth that's not only cool to look at, but ties directly into the gameplay with actual functionality. As I touched on earlier, I also loved her outfits in this game, and with so much variety, they truly provide something for everyone. The fashion in this game is something I adore, and let's be honest, who doesn't want to feel like a bad bitch slaying monstrosities with magic and a spear? Her attacks look flashy, whether it's parrying and flying into the air or launching yourself back while shooting multiple fireballs. Overall, the art direction for this game exceeded my expectations, which were already pretty high. This game is gorgeous, and the visuals all come together to make something beautiful and unique. When it comes to Souls-likes, replayability tends to be one of the biggest strengths, and Wuchang is no different. You can do a playthrough on each different weapon category alone, as they all provide unique skill sets and their own ways to approach the combat. Like I mentioned earlier, this game is also huge, and with the amount of content packed into it, I'd say it's unlikely you see or get everything done in your first playthrough. Not to mention, there's also 4 different endings offering something new to see depending on your in-game choices. With a $50 price tag, you're getting a ton of playtime, and as someone who always strives to get the most out of their games, I dumped about 45 hours into this title. If you like a game that you can revisit over and over again while experiencing something new each time, you will certainly find that here. So this is the section that I'm sure a lot of you guys were particularly interested in, and the section that explains the atrocious reviews on the Steam page. This game is profoundly resource hungry and has been getting shredded into the ground for its poor optimization. Fortunately for me, I do have a pretty beefy setup running on a 4080 Super, so a lot of the problems I'm hearing of are not from personal experience, as my game ran pretty well with max settings and no frame gen. Aside from random stuttering and frame drops every 30 minutes or so, nothing was remotely game breaking, and my game didn't look muddy or pixelated with noticeable artifacts. I will say though, with my setup, I still don't think I should really be getting any frame drops at all, especially considering that I play on 1080p resolution. The recommended specs for this title were obviously far lower than they should have been, as we are once again facing another UE5 title that struggles to run properly. Even when playing on a build above the game's minimum requirements, the artifacts appear to be much more prominent with large dips in frames on GPUs like the 3060, providing an experience that's just about serviceable. A patch for the PC version was released almost immediately after launch, which did seem to significantly improve user experiences, but a ton of people are also reporting that most of the optimization done was fake. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the in-depth workings of these graphical systems, but if you are interested in seeing the numbers, I would highly recommend this video here. Truthfully, if you have a strong build, this game will run fine, but if you're on hardware that's more dated, I would get as much testing done in the 2-hour time limit Steam provides, so you can get that refund if necessary. While doing as much research as I could on this game's performance, I found vastly different experiences across the board, with some people reporting having no issues on the same hardware that people could hardly play the game on. More consistently, the console performance reportedly runs much better, not suffering the same issues that many PC users were dealing with. The game itself is great, but when the performance is such an issue, it tends to become the main talking point. And unfortunately, that's the price that has to be paid for poor optimization. With all said and done, let's give Wuchang Fallen Feathers my official score. As for the gameplay, I found it to be extremely enjoyable with its combat and exploration. This game didn't ever feel stale to me, and while this isn't the most innovative title, there's a lot of fun to be had here. I'll give the gameplay an 8.5. For the story, as I mentioned earlier, I was impressed to find something that was fun to engage with, easy to follow, and well fleshed out. The fact that I could follow along with it and not have to do external research was a nice change for a Souls-like, even if it's not the most unique story I've experienced. The world alone has great storytelling and I was invested throughout the entire playthrough. I'll give it a 7. As for the stability of this title, I can't give it nearly as much praise. While I didn't have remotely as many issues as everyone else, I don't think any game should require such a beefy build to have a smooth experience. The performance patch did seem to help out most, but it also seems to be quite deceitful in what it actually fixed. The performance on console seems to be much better, so unless you're on PC, you shouldn't really have anything to worry about. I'll give this section a 3. When it comes to replayability, this game has a ton of value. As mentioned earlier, the multiple endings and ways to approach this game add a lot of variety, and with so much content packed into this title, it will no doubt take multiple playthroughs to see everything. Replayability is a core feature of the Souls-like genre, and this game is no different. This gets an 8. The graphics in this game, if your system can handle it, are gorgeous. While I don't think it's quite good enough to be so resource hungry, I still found everything to be pretty cohesive and pretty. The water, foliage, magic effects, character models, and lighting looked amazing and does fit into the upper echelon of this genre. I'll give the graphics a 9. Onto the art design of this title, I can't say too much more. The environments in this game are beautiful, and the horror elements of this game are executed just as well. This game really does have an amazing art direction, and for that, I'll give it a 9. Onto the final score, and my overall rating for this title, I'll give it an 8. Ultimately, I absolutely loved my time spent with Wuchang Fallen Feathers. This game stood out to me in the sea of Souls-likes and is likely one that will remain amongst my favorites. Despite its enjoyable gameplay and beautiful art design, its stability and performance will certainly leave a sour taste amongst many, and that's rightfully so. While I personally didn't experience the technical issues with this game, I think it's important that they are heavily shunned because the trend of unfinished and poorly optimized games has been an absolute plague on gaming. If you enjoyed this video, a like or subscribe is always appreciated, and if you want to check out the rest of my content, I do review both old and new games. I also do make art, which you can find linked down in the description if you want to see it for yourself and show some love. Feel free to let me know down in the comments whether you enjoyed this title or not, and until next time, thanks for watching.